Welcome back to another season of Inside the System. I'm Jasmine Logan, and I'm joined by Emeritus Political Science Professor Dr. David Canervo. Today we'll be covering news in American politics relating to the National Guard's deployment into U.S. states, RFK's recent appearance on Capitol Hill, and the executive order that changed the name of Secretary Pete Hegseth's department. So stay tuned. The Trump administration's use of the National Guard and recent ICE raids are sparking backlash. Protests were held in various cities across the country last Saturday. Jen Sullivan reports on the White House's show of force in Democratic cities and the pushback it's receiving.
Protesters taking to the streets of Metro Chicago Saturday as the Trump administration threatens to ramp up immigration and customs enforcement raids. The move is sparking outrage among many Democratic state and local leaders in Illinois.
Know that there is the possibility that ICE will be on the ground and causing some mayhem. Please protest, pull out your phone, video everything that they're doing.
The White House has also threatened to deploy National Guard troops to Chicago to help combat crime. Over Labor Day weekend alone, police say at least 7 people were killed and more than 50 others were wounded in several shootings across the city.
These people are sick. There's something wrong with them.
Protests also staged in Washington, D.C. Saturday and Savannah, Georgia, Friday, just days after a massive ICE raid at a Hyundai plant west of that city.
We need all work to end on the site right now.
475 people were arrested there Thursday.
This, in fact, was the largest single-site enforcement operation in the history of Homeland Security investigations.
Some Democrats say such raids and Guard deployments amount to government overreach by Trump.
He knows that this goes against the mission of the National Guard. He knows this goes against the scope and scale.
Public opinion about immigration appears to be shifting. According to a recent Gallup poll, when asked should immigration be kept at its present level, increased or decreased, 30% of Americans polled now say decreased as opposed to 55% in June of 2024. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
Dr. Canervo, how do these actions compare with past moments in U.S. history where federal troops were deployed domestically, like during the Civil Rights Movement or after natural disasters?
Well, early in our history, the troops have been deployed primarily and almost exclusively, really, with the governor of the state asking for those troops to be brought in, and the president, of course, as commander-in-chief, working with the governor to send those troops in under federal control. And so this is really a quite different situation in that Governor Newsom of California did not ask for the troops in Los Angeles. He did not want them. He saw no need for them. And so this is a case where the president put the troops into a situation where the governor certainly did not think they were needed. The last time the troops were used in a situation of trying to control rioting or in a law enforcement situation goes back to 1992 with the Rodney King riots. Rodney King was an African-American motorist who was stopped by the police. He was beaten, and the officers were put on trial. In 1992, the trial ended with the officers being found not guilty of violence against, or at least of unreasonable violence against Rodney King. That led to a huge turnout of people in Los Angeles, riots, destruction, lives lost, and the troops were brought out at that time to help quell the violence, to try to bring order back to the city. Most of the time, when the National Guard is brought out, they are brought out by the governor for service purposes. Case of floods, tornado damage, various other kinds of disasters which have occurred in a state, then the troops are brought in to help residents to restore not so much order, but to help the citizens restore their lives and to help rescue people who may have been threatened with bodily harm because of the disaster itself. So this is really a quite different sort of use of the troops from what we've experienced in past years.
Very true. President Trump himself called on these troops to combat crime and immigration in certain cities that he feels it's needed. However, public opinion polls show that Americans are becoming more skeptical about immigration. How do you think these tactics shape the administration's willingness to use these aggressive tactics?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that are going on. One, of course, is that we are seeing labor shortages in areas that immigrants have traditionally filled, such as some factories, meat processing factories. We saw the raid in Georgia at the Hyundai plant where about 400 Koreans, South Koreans, were taken out of their jobs and are being sent back to South Korea. So that either will produce job opportunities or shortages in Georgia, depending on how many people apply for those jobs. Farmers are finding it very difficult this year to find farm labor to help with picking crops, cutting tobacco, all of those things that are traditionally performed by immigrants because Americans don't want to do them. So those are all major problems, it seems to me. And I think a second area that has been problematic is the use of facilities to intern these people. It's almost reminiscent, I suppose, of the Japanese being housed in concentration camps back during World War II. Here we're seeing Latin American, primarily, immigrants being held in places such as, quote unquote, alligator Alcatraz. The fact that we would use that name, the fact that we would house people in those kinds of conditions, I think bothers at least some people as to displaying who we are as Americans.
Yes.
There are people getting ramped up, excited about, we're putting these people in the middle of alligators. Great. This will show them. This implies a desire for perhaps violence, and it raises some unfortunate issues about who we are and what our country stands for, and whether that's how we should be treating people. Whether they're illegal aliens or not, they're still human beings with families who deserve a better treatment.
We're definitely starting to get a sense of how Americans are feeling about the deployment of the troops and about these raids, but how do you think this could affect America's image on an international level?
I think it depends on the country. The country doesn't have immigrants in this country, or at least illegal immigrants in this country, who are being detained and deported, then probably they're not going to care much. And they may see it as something which is not inappropriate, that we are a nation defending its borders. But for Hispanic nations, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Mexico, any of the South American countries, or whether it's South Korea. Those countries may feel offended, very offended, by how their citizens who have come to this country are being treated. That they're being treated in some cases brutally, that they're being separated from the rest of their family in some cases. And so I can see certainly some pushback from those countries to us. South Korea, for example, is a major trading partner. They have a number of plants around the country, including some in Clarksville. And we want to treat those folks, it seems to me, well. We want to maintain a good relationship with that country. And I can't help but wonder if some of the South Korean leaders aren't, and business leaders as well as political leaders, aren't maybe having second thoughts about whether the United States is a good host country.
I'm definitely interested to see how America's allies and adversaries will react to these situations that are going on right now. But we'll be right back after this short break to discuss RFK's appearance at the recent Senate hearing.
My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. It's time to start saving now. A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was in the hot seat on Capitol Hill last Thursday amid calls for his resignation. Karen Kafa is reporting from Capitol Hill with the latest about the nation's vaccine policies and more.
This 3-hour Senate hearing got pretty contentious pretty much right off the bat, with a protester interrupting Kennedy's opening statement, and then Democrats quickly slamming Kennedy's leadership and his reshaping of government health agencies.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. defending his decision to fire the director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
We need bold, competent, and creative new leadership at CDC. People able and willing to chart a new course.
The hearing before the Senate Finance Committee was scheduled to focus on the Trump administration's 2026 healthcare agenda. But on the heels of Kennedy's ouster of former CDC Director Susan Monarez, Democrats quickly slammed his leadership and his longtime claims against vaccines and how that undermines public trust.
Sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are. You're the ones who conflate chronic disease with the need for vaccines.
Two Republican physicians expressing concern about the Trump administration's changes to vaccine policy. John Barrasso of Wyoming saying Kennedy isn't upholding vaccine standards as promised during confirmation.
The public has seen measles outbreaks, leadership in the National Institute of Health questioning the use of mRNA vaccines. Americans don't know who to rely on.
Bill Cassidy of Louisiana critical of new FDA limits on COVID-19 vaccines.
I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
Kennedy argued current policy doesn't deny anyone a COVID-19 booster, although it is now state dependent, and he defended his controversial moves to reshape government public health agencies.
If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job.
Kennedy's appearance came the day after more than 1,000 former and current HHS employees signed onto a letter calling on him to resign, a call echoed by some Democrats on the panel Thursday. On Capitol Hill, I'm Karen Kafa.
Secretary Kennedy defended his decision to fire the saying the agency did not do its job. Dr. Connervo, what kind of precedent does this set for how future administrations might treat independent health agencies?
Well, of course, one of the problems is that some of these agencies, whether it's CDC or others, like the Federal Trade Commission, the board which regulates interest rates, all of these are considered independent agencies. And as independent agencies, they're supposed to be separate from politics. They are supposed to be staffed by people who are professionals, who understand the industry that they're regulating, and have a willingness to give the best information and best recommendations to policymakers. For the HHS secretary to now fire someone who is at odds with him philosophically, after all, this person is a medical doctor. She is very much within the traditions of medicine, believing that science, research, those sorts of things are needed and are appropriate for finding the best answers to health problems. Kennedy is not someone who necessarily follows the research, so to speak. He is not someone who necessarily believes that science has the best answers or the process by which we should find the answers. And that leads to real problems, particularly in regard to public policies that will come as a result. The vaccine issue was the one that particularly, I think, got the CDC director fired. She is very much someone who believes in medical findings, the success of vaccines for 80 years or 100 years in this country, that they have solved health problems. We eradicated measles. We have essentially eradicated polio, and yet now we're questioning whether those things are valid. What will happen in the future, of course, depends on who the president is and who the president selects as the director of HHS or any of these other agencies that are supposed to be independent. Traditionally, whether it's been a Republican or a Democrat, they have been in the mainstream. George Bush, both George Bushes as presidents, selected people to head agencies who were very much in the mainstream. Democratic presidents did the same thing. These were traditional people who followed what we had done in the past because they believed in it. This president and this administration are different. And whether this will set a precedent, of course, remains to be seen. It will be dependent upon who follows Trump as president. If, for example, J.D. Vance becomes the next president, who knows what he will do based on his experiences with the Trump administration.
It's definitely clear that RFK and his current beliefs aren't aligning with what's backed by science. What are the long-term consequences if Americans no longer view the CDC or the FDA as trustworthy sources of health information?
If the public does not view the CDC or other health agencies or other agencies in the government more generally as reliable, as valid, as truthful, then what we're going to see are people who are essentially confused, I think, about what to believe. If the director of HHS questions measles shots and local doctor says, but measles shots are important for your child, what do you do? Who do you believe? And what we're seeing, for example, already in Florida is that state has removed all vaccination requirements for children who are entering school. That means more children will go to school without being vaccinated against measles, mumps, chickenpox, rubella, polio, and that more and more cases will more likely sprout up in that state and for people who visit that state. We've had at least 2 children die in this country from measles. And that's the first time that has happened in years and years and years because of the vaccination programs that we've had in this country. And so one potential problem may very well be a decrease in the health of children.
Polling does show that more and more Americans are behind the idea of access to vaccines, excluding the COVID-19 vaccine. Do you think this will influence RFK's approach to vaccines?
We may take a more voluntary approach to vaccines where parents, by and large, will get their children vaccinated. I think a majority will probably still be in that direction, but that we'll see an increasing minority of parents who choose not to get their children vaccinated because of one fear or another. One of the fears, of course, is autism, that with the increase in autism in this country, at least the increase in the diagnosis of autism, that people like Kennedy and others have blamed vaccines in the past as perhaps being a cause. While the science does not show that that's the case, there are still people who are going to be skeptical. And again, it's going to lead, I think, to a decline in health for children in this country. And while I hope I'm not offending people, my view is that if a parent does not get their child vaccinated and that child gets very sick or dies as a result, that is tantamount to child abuse on the part of the parent.
We'll definitely have to see over time how these policies are going to shape the health of Americans and their children overall. But for now, we'll be right back after this short break to discuss the DOD's name change. So stay tuned.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Thanks for sticking around. To close out our segment today, we'll be talking about the new name for the Department of Defense. Let's hear directly from the President about what led to this executive order.
We've been talking about this Department of War. So we won the First World War, we won the Second World War, we won everything before that and in between, and then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense. So we're going Department of War, and I'd like to ask our Secretary of War to say a few words. Pete Hegseth. I think it's a much more appropriate name, especially in light of where the world is right now. We have the strongest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest manufacturers of equipment by far. There's nobody to even compete. And you see that with this and so many other things. The Patriots are the best. Every element of the military, we make the best by far.
The Department of War was renamed the Department of Defense in 1947 following World War II. Dr. Canervo, how might U.S. allies and adversaries interpret this rebranding as the Department of War?
Now, my concern is the connotation which comes from the two words, defense versus war. And I think part of that is what Trump had in mind with the renaming. Trump seems to want a more aggressive image for the Department of Defense or War, however you want to call it. He wants American military strength to be seen as particularly strong, as aggressive, and I'm not sure that we want to be seen as an aggressive country militarily. We're a democracy that believes in essentially everybody having a say, everybody having the right to do their own business and be left alone. Defense means that we are trying to stop those who are interfering with that, those who are interfering with our nation or our nation's best interest. War suggests that we are willing to perhaps be the aggressor at times. Does that mean we're going to go after the Panama Canal? Does that mean we're going to go after Greenland on our own without being provoked into an attack as we would with defense? So it concerns me a great deal about the image that is being projected, that we are an aggressive country, that we're going to take care of our own, that we're going to take care of our own interest at the expense of others. It's a rhetoric, I think, which is somewhat divisive. Yesterday, we saw the political assassination of Charles Kirk, a very conservative person who inflamed a lot of people with his rhetoric. Back in the early summer, we saw, I believe she was the Speaker of the House in Minnesota, and someone went to her front door, shot her husband and her. So we have a Republican and a Democrat both being killed within about a 3 or 4 month period over political views. And that's horrible for both sides. I agree with one side more than the other, but nevertheless, the fact that we should have to face that. We're having a special election in Montgomery County in this District 7 for the United States House of Representatives because Mark Green has resigned. One of the candidates has said in his campaign literature that we need to crush the other side. Crush the other side. Is that what we do in a democracy? Seems to me a democracy is built on 2 or more viable political parties contesting for office, contesting for votes, but all essentially on the same side, supporting that country in the best way possible. To me, crushing the other side suggests that, in fact, what they're wanting to do is eliminate the other party, eliminate the opposition, which says to me a one-party country, an authoritarian one-party country. And so all of that rhetoric, that very divisive rhetoric of which war and defense is part of, is to me dangerous, it's unnecessary, undesirable, and we need to be coming together as a people, not dividing as a people, not calling for people to be beaten up as a president of the United States has done, not calling on people to be eliminated, to be put in alligator Alcatraz, because the connotation of those words. It just seems to me a place where Americans don't need to go, because that says, again, something about who we are as a people. And we need to be a people of justice, people of kindness, people of willingness to help other people, not turn against them.
Yes, and you're right. Unfortunately, political violence does seem to be on the rise as this country becomes more divided with this current administration. Our current president, Trump, he campaigned with the idea that once he made it into office, he would end war, right? Referring to the war between Ukraine and Russia, as well as the war in Gaza between Israel and Palestine. Do you think this executive order to change the name to the Department of War aligns with the campaign that he ran on?
Well, that's right. And one other thing regarding that, while he talked early on in his administration about saving money and cutting fat and waste, changing the name of the department from defense to war is costing a great deal of money. It's going to mean having to redo all the signs, having to redo all of the stationery, having to redo all of the labeling, all of the naming of Department of Defense buildings around the country. And that's going to add up into the millions of dollars for something which is unneeded, unnecessary, ridiculous, when in fact we've been cutting money from people who are hungry, from people who need medical care, giving tax breaks to billionaires, and yet we need to spend money on changing defense into war.
You're right. I mean, this executive order came unprompted. It wasn't a necessary change. However, this name changing of the department won't be passed without Congress's approval. Do you think they will get behind this decision?
It depends, I guess, when it's brought up in Congress. Of course, currently Republicans control Congress, and they have, of course, the edge in being able to do that. And it may very well be that the president will push them into doing just that before the midterm elections. And so that's certainly a possibility. Now, you're right that it won't become formal until Congress does it, but I remember seeing a film clip the other day of workers pulling down the word defense from the side of the building and putting up the letters of WAR. So at least there will be some changes within the administration that he can control.
Yes, they're already taking some steps, just like physically altering that name to put this decision into effect.
That's
And,
right.
I'm definitely interested to see what Congress's response will be to this executive order once it is brought up. But unfortunately, that's all we have for you guys today. Before we go, we would like to take a quick moment to recognize everyone who was affected by the tragic events that took place on September 11th, 2001. Many loved ones were lost that day, but they will never be forgotten. Thank you all for tuning in for another edition of Inside the System. We'll see you next time.